In Christianity, there are many sacred items known as relics. But just because they're holy doesn't mean they're not disturbing. From an ornate gold statue housing the skull of Mary Magdalene to the lost coins of Judas Iscariot, and even a burial shroud with an intriguing secret. But what are these relics? How do they work? And what secrets do they contain? Welcome to Strange Christian Art. This episode, Dark Relics. Across many branches of Christianity, but especially in Catholicism, relics are sacred objects that preserve the remains of holy saints. Believers often use relics in their prayers, appealing to a saint to intercede for them before God. Today, relics come in all shapes and sizes, but the Church divides them into three distinct classes. First class, the actual physical remains of a saint. Second class, objects that were personally owned or used by a saint. Third class, items that have come into contact with either a first or second class relic. As we proceed down our list, we will see many different types of these relics, of course, some of which are quite literally the preserved remains of the saint. Alright, let's begin with our first relic. The incorruptible jaw of St. Anthony. St. Anthony of Padua is one of the most revered saints in Catholic history. A legendary preacher, his relic speaks to his greatest gift, his voice. This is the jaw of St. Anthony, meant to preserve the essence of the saint's speech. The remains are housed in this ornate reliquary, lavishly adorned with gold and jewels, above which rests an intricately carved golden halo that encircles the saint's head. Now, at first glance, it may even appear as though it has eyes. I certainly thought so. But this effect is just a reflection of the glass. Viewed from another angle, the illusion disappears entirely. It's certainly a haunting object, yet I find that there's something strangely beautiful about it, and the story behind it is just as mysterious. Saint Anthony was a preacher like no other. In one story, even the fish would gather to hear him speak. But his life was cut short. He succumbed to illness at the age of 35. 30 years after his death, his body was exhumed, and what was found there shocked everyone. According to legend, his jaw and tongue had been perfectly preserved. Many believed it was a sign that his voice had been blessed by God. For over 700 years, St. Anthony's incorruptible remains have been kept on display. Pilgrims from around the world continue to visit Padua to venerate his holy relic, often during sacred processions. Nowadays, St. Anthony remains the patron saint of lost things. So, if you ever find yourself searching for something lost, look no further than his sacred relic. Speaking of lost things, next we turn to one of Christianity's most enigmatic figures. The skull of Mary Magdalene. Beneath the crypt of a basilica in France lies a humble skull housed in a lavish gold reliquary. This is the head of Mary Magdalene, believed to be one of Jesus' closest companions. Her head is supported by 4 angels, their outstretched hands acting as a stand. Taken as a whole, it's a truly magnificent artifact. But why do I hear Dark Souls music? Beyond its stunning medieval craftsmanship, this relic holds another intriguing backstory, and possibly the secrets of the saint herself. While not counted among the 12 disciples, Mary Magdalene plays a crucial role in the story of Jesus. She was present at the crucifixion and among the first to witness his resurrection. Yet, little is known about what happened to her afterwards. According to one popular legend, she sailed to France to found one of the earliest Christian communities. These legends gained momentum when in 1279 a mysterious woman's skull was found in a tomb dating back to the 1st century. And of course, it didn't take long for people to speculate that this was the saint herself. In recent years, renewed attention has been given to this relic. 2 forensic artists have used the skull to create a 3D reconstruction of the person's face. The result was this: an image of a woman of Mediterranean descent. Could this be the face of Mary Magdalene? It's impossible to know for sure, but researchers are now working to create a full body rendering using other relics associated with the saint. Regardless, the relic of Mary Magdalene endures, forever preserved in this beautiful yet haunting reliquary. The heads of John the Baptist. This third relic belongs to one of the most important figures in the New Testament, John the Baptist. According to the Gospels, John met a grisly fate. He was imprisoned and eventually executed by King Herod. His head was gifted to the king's daughter on a platter. Now, what happened to his head remains a mystery, but in the centuries that followed, not 1, but 4 different places have claimed to have found his grim relic. The most famous of these is kept in the Cathedral of Amiens in France. In a small chapel within the cathedral, a skull is enshrined on a gold platter, just like in the story. A nice touch. But it's not the only one. In San Silvestro in Rome, there's a skull fragment, complete with a wax head. In Munich, a separate head is kept on display, this time wrapped in a fine cloth adorned with pearls and jeweled roses. And the final alleged head? It's not housed in a church at all, but in a mosque. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, one of the oldest in the Islamic world, contains a shrine dedicated to John the Baptist, who is also a revered prophet in Islam. So, multiple heads, but only one John the Baptist. Although a multi-headed prophet would make for some pretty hardcore Christian art. It's an unusual predicament, but surprisingly common. During the Middle Ages, relics were in high demand, and there were always people willing to supply them. It's often joked that if you gathered all the alleged fragments of the true cross, you'd have enough wood to build a small forest. So far, we've seen 3 relics, but we're only scratching the surface. It's a miracle that any of these have actually survived. You see, there were times in history when they were nearly lost altogether. During the Protestant Reformation, many relics were viewed as idolatrous, seen to be contradicting biblical teachings against graven images. In those turbulent years, churches were looted and burned, Christian art was defaced, and countless relics were destroyed. In Catholicism, however, they were not seen to be a problem. In fact, the Church clarifies that believers do not worship the object, or even the saint it belonged to. Instead, relics are venerated in order for a saint to pray on their behalf. Think of them as a spiritual aid. Of course, the debate over relics has persisted for centuries, and will likely continue for many more. But few relics have garnered as much controversy as our next one. The Shroud of Turin. This 14-foot long linen cloth has had a remarkable history. If you look closely at the fabric, you'll see the faint outline of a person. When enhanced, the image reveals the figure of a bearded man with long hair, bearing scars that suggest he might have been executed. Many have speculated that this is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. And it's not without reason. It closely matches many historic depictions of Jesus throughout art. Of course, if this relic really belonged to Jesus, it would be one of the most valuable and sacred relics in history. But while the shroud presents a compelling image, it's not without its detractors. Since 1988, several laboratories have used radiocarbon dating and have placed the cloth within the mid-14th century, well within the medieval era. This has led many to suspect it is a forgery, albeit an incredibly convincing one. However, the results have been hotly debated ever since. As recently as 2022, Italian researchers have used a pioneering X-ray technique to analyse a small segment of the shroud. Their findings suggest that the linen appears to date between 55 to 74 CE, a time frame that aligns closely with the historical period of Jesus' burial. When announced, these results caused a stir. Could this really be the face of Jesus? As of this video's release, further testing is ongoing, and not everyone is convinced. In the meantime, we'll have to await the results of future studies. The Blood Miracle. This next relic is a vial of dried human blood, but one with a remarkable claim to fame. On the 19th of September every year, people across Naples gather to see the dried blood of Saint Januarius miraculously turn into liquid. As with many relics, there's no definitive scientific explanation for why this happens, largely because comprehensive studies have been restricted. But some researchers suggest that the vial may contain a substance that naturally liquefies when shaken. That said, there are years when the dried blood fails to liquefy altogether, which many interpret as a bad omen. In the last century, some of those years have included 1939, 1940, and 1943, all within the Second World War, and more recently 2020, where, well, we all know how that went. The lost coins of Judas Iscariot. Until now, we've discussed holy relics, but now it's time to talk about the unholy relics, like the so-called Judas coins, the 30 pieces of silver that Judas Iscariot received in exchange for betraying Jesus. One of these coins is believed to be kept in a museum in Ireland. This ancient decadrachm dates to the classical era and is engraved with figures from Roman mythology. But what's most intriguing is the gold band around its edge, inscribed with the Latin phrase, "This is the price of blood." The inscription, of course, implies that the coin once belonged to Judas Iscariot, although it's impossible to verify such a claim, and historians agree that the gold rim is likely a later addition. That said, this relic is directly tied to one of the most infamous betrayals in the Bible. It's said that whoever touches the coin will be plagued with bad luck. Over the course of this list, we've seen relics that connect us to saints, and in some cases, sinners. As a collection, they seem to straddle the line between the deeply disturbing and the hauntingly beautiful. Of course, relics like these offer many Christians a sacred connection to the divine, and not all of them are dark. Among them, my personal favourite is something I call the Golden Bird of Saint Onufrius, and for one reason alone. This reliquary is dedicated to the patron saint of lawyers, but it's been damaged in a rather unfortunate way. And relics like these were never meant to be feared, they were meant to be adored. And while today they may seem unsettling, the Christianity of old was far more comfortable with things that we might now consider dark. To me, I think these relics connect us to something unknowable, a far more ancient side of Christianity that the world has, in many ways, moved away from. And there are so many examples of this throughout history, just like a mysterious book written in 1552, filled with terrifying images, all warning of a coming apocalypse. But that's a topic for another video. Watch here to find out more. Hey, thanks for watching. I had a great time making this, and I really hope you enjoyed it as well. If you like this video and want to see more, why not subscribe? A like and a comment also go a really long way. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.